Okay, today we're going to look at something different than what we've been dealing with, and that is circle graphs, bar graphs, double bar graphs, and histograms. And what these are we use these so we can see the relationship between numbers that's really difficult to see with just plain old numbers. And we want to look at the relationships that are just really hard to put into words a lot of times, and we can see them better with an actual graph. In fact, a lot of businesses use these all the time to show relationships between different things, as well as how a business did one year compared to the second year. You can break them up into quarters, you can break them up into months. It depends on what's being looked at. But these are very important that we can actually see what's going on a little bit better than just looking at the numbers. Okay, we're going to look at a double bar graph. This is a double bar graph. The only difference between this and a bar graph is there's two bars instead of just one. Okay, now let's look at this. It's divided up into two parts. Our horizontal is going to represent the different quarters. Okay, over here we have the number of people unemployed. And this particular double bar graph represents the number of people that were unemployed in Charge City during each quarter of 1989 and 1990. So this shows unemployment. Okay, this is showing unemployment in a particular city during the years 1989 and 1990. Now this over here represents the number of people in hundreds. So we start off, this would be 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, 300, 350, 400, 450, 500, 550, 600. Okay, these are the number of people that are employed, and these are the quarters that they're looking at. Now, over here tells us which bar represents which year. The open or the white bar is the year 1989, where the darkened or black bar represents the 1990. So that means we're looking at this bar graph to determine things. And now the first question we want to ask, the first question I'm going to ask is, how many people were unemployed during the second quarter of 1990? I want to know how many people were unemployed during the second quarter of 1990. So we're looking at the second quarter of 1990. So we need to look at our bar graph. Okay, looking at this bar graph, we're going to look for 1990 is black, and we're looking for the second quarter. So we're going to look at the second quarter, and we're going to look at the black graph. So we're going to take I'm going to use a ruler and go across and see that it matches with the line 450. Okay, so I'm going to look under second quarter because I want to know the number of people in 1990 that were unemployed during the second quarter. So I look under the black line for 1990 and go up to the top and then read it over to my vertical line, which says 450. So the answer to my first question, how many people were unemployed during the second quarter of 1990 is going to be 450 people. Okay. The second question I'm going to ask is, how many people were unemployed during the fourth quarter of 1989? So I'm looking for the fourth quarter of 1989. So again, I need to look at my bar graph, and I'm looking under 1989 now, so I'm looking at the white bar, and I'm looking at the fourth quarter. So I'm looking at this bar right here. So I'm going to take the top and match it across, and notice that it matches at 600. Okay. Look for the white bar because I'm looking at year 1989. The white bar, the top represents 600. So the question is, how many people were unemployed during the fourth quarter of 1989? The answer is going to be 600 people. Okay, 600 people is what we're looking for. Third problem. During which quarter were the fewest people unemployed? During which quarter were the fewest people unemployed? Again, we're going to go back to our bar graph and look for the smallest amount. Well, actually, it looks like there was a tie. These are the two lowest bars, and they're exactly across from each other. So it looks like it's the second and third quarter, and they're white, so it represents 1989. So it's the third and the fourth quarter of 1989. There was a tie. Third and fourth, second and third quarter of 1989. The second and third quarter of 1989. That's how we read a bar graph. A double bar graph and a bar graph are basically the same. The only difference is with a bar graph, there's actually two bars there instead of just one. But then we can tell that during the first quarter in 1989 was better than the first quarter in 1990. But then the second quarter, it did a turnaround. A big increase for the second quarter when there was very low in the second quarter of 1989. And in the third quarter in both years, they were exactly the same. So this is how we read a double bar graph. A circle graph, in a circle graph, parts of the circle graph are like slices of pie. Notice it's like pieces of a pie, but some pieces are bigger than the other. Okay, sometimes this is also referred to as a pie chart. Sometimes it's also referred to as a pie chart, but most of the time it's called a circle graph. The numbers in a circle graph usually are given in percent form, and they total 100%. That is, if we took 44% and 33% and 10% and 7% and 6% and added them all up, we would come up with a total of 100%. Okay, that's how a circle graph works. Now, what we want to do is understand that this circle graph, this particular circle graph, represents the distribution of 5,000 students on the campus by age. Now, it could have been done any different ways. It could have been by hair color. It could have been by areas that they were interested in their field of study. There's a lot of different ways that we could divide this up, but it's usually done with percentages. And this particular graph represents 5,000 students by age. 5,000 students by age. Okay, now let's see if we can answer some questions using the circle graph. Okay, the first question I want to ask is, I want to know what age group has the smallest percent of the student body. Okay, what age group has the smallest percent of the student body? So I need to go to my circle graph and look for the smallest percentage. Looking for the smallest percentage. Which is the smallest percentage? Turns out to be 6% is the smallest. And what age group is that? Okay, the people under 18. So the answer for my question, what age group has the smallest percent of the student body, it's going to be the under 18 age. Or age under 18. Okay, and that would make sense, but because most people that are going to college have already graduated from high school, and therefore they're usually close to 18 or over 18, or over 18 very quickly. So that makes sense.